I'm Chris Williams from Cyclone Fanatic and a proud Iowa State graduate from the class of 2007. No one shows up like Iowa State fans. And Cyclones support Cyclones on and off the field. Your gift can provide scholarships to students, fund groundbreaking research. We could even drum up opportunities for the marching band. Visit MoveWhatMatters.com to learn how you can make an impact today.
What is up, Cyclone Fanatic Postgame Show? I'm your host, Aiden Wyatt. Jake Brend's going to join me here in a second. Iowa State wins over Arizona, gets that revenge win. First, I want to thank a couple of our sponsors, starting with our friends over at Channel Seed. Of course, they've been with us all year long. We appreciate their support for both the men and the women. And of course, our friends over at Keen Project Solutions. Visit thinkdifferentthinkkeen.com. And lastly, our friends at Raymond James. That's Clay and Chase Natuzel, our guys, huge Cyclone fans. I'm sure they're thrilled tonight. Jake, let's get into it. I mean, you had the Gold Rules game. George and Tyrese were in the building. I think the only I heard the 5 and 35 guy won a lawnmower. I think the only thing that was missing tonight
It's two games in a row.
Dan McCarney. Yeah. The only thing missing was Dan McCarney waiting in the locker room to tell these guys they took Arizona to the woodshed and whipped their ass. I mean, that was flat out. Iowa State dominated. It came within 10, but it really felt like it was out of hand most of the game. What are your first thoughts?
Yeah, I'll talk about my nitpicks later, but the lead of this game is it was a statement win. You said it, 84-67. It felt similar to that TCU game when Milan returned. The energy in the building before the game, when you knew, all right, the Cyclones are going to be at full strength. Let's ride. They've been kicked while they were down, coming off of a bad loss against Oklahoma State. But all of that combined with George Niang, Tyrese Halliburton, both back in the building for the first time since their senior days. A night Saturday game that doesn't happen that often. The vibes were out of control. And that spilled into the first half where that's probably the best half of basketball that Iowa State has played fully healthy since that first half of the Auburn game. It would be really hard to find another one where they got it without two of their best players really doing much in Joshua Jefferson and Curtis Jones. You got that explosion from Milan Momcilovic. And that reminded me a little bit of last year when he in the Big 12 tournament when he was on that struggle bus as a freshman and he got a couple to go down. And when he can go on stretches like that by himself, when he's starting to release the ball before he even catches it, when he has that type of confidence, it raises Iowa State's ceiling more than maybe what any other player can do. So that and what Brant Chatfield and Nate Heisey were able to add off the bench, two guys that have gotten a lot of crap from the fan base over the last 2 months. And a lot of it certainly well-deserved. They both had rough stretches. But this just goes to show, I guess, the culture of that program. Nate Heisey, off the bench, scores 12 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3, 4 rebounds. It felt like he had 10 rebounds, 2 steals, only 1 turnover. Just a fantastic game out of Heisey. Those were my main takeaways from that first half when Iowa State was able to jump out to a 13-point lead.
Let's talk a little Keshon Gilbert. Obviously, he was a story coming in the game. Will he, won't he play? Obviously, he plays. Certainly struggled from the field a little bit. What were your expectations coming in, and did he fulfill them?
I thought he started pretty well. I know the stats weren't there. I thought he seemed more under control early. He had that really nice pass inside to Brant Chatfield for the dunk. Had a couple really nice assists. But as the game went on, I don't know if he was trying to force himself back into form, so to say, force himself back into mid-season Gilbert form. But he got out of control. He got benched with about, I think, 6-7 minutes to go, did not re-enter the game. And I hate to pin it on one guy, but he was a huge reason why this game maybe became uncomfortable at one point. And I don't know how much of a concern the 7 turnovers is. He's a high-volume player that is going to turn the ball over. You'd like to see that number around 4, 5, and towards the end, it just got out of hand, and I think Otzelberger made the right move, pushing him to the bench. So if you're looking for a key to the next 2 games and even into the Big 12 tournament, you got to get Keshon somewhat back to midseason form, and I don't know what that looks like because it's hard to try and take away what makes Keshon great when it's also sometimes what makes him bad. And no one knows that better than TJ Otzelberger. So as long as he gets healthier, I think he might settle in a little bit.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Let's talk a little bit more big picture stuff. Mainly, this was game 18 of the Big 12 regular season. At this point last year, I don't know where the dates line up necessarily, but 18 games into the Big 12 season, you were done. You had some buys in there. What do you think the last 2 games look like, kind of with this 20-game schedule?
Yeah, I think everyone saw on Tuesday night the exhaustion. A lot of that came from guys playing out of their roles, trying to overcome Keshon Gilbert not being on the court, trying to overcome Kurt Jones maybe not being 100%. I think there's a lot of tired legs. So that's a good point on what those 2 extra games will look like, but they're 2 must-win games. If Iowa State wants to get to that 2 line, which I think tonight did a ton for, because they didn't squeak by Arizona. They just beat Arizona by 17. They got revenge for the loss in late January that honestly started this slump. I'd be interested to, once I go into pregame after this show, I'd be interested to ask the players in hindsight how much that initial loss on the Caleb Love full court shot, how much that affected the team. But tonight, the national media saw a fully healthy Iowa State team win by 17. And you'd like to think that they'll get a little bit of credit from the committee for that. And if you win your last 2 games, you should be in a pretty good position to get maybe that last 2 seed.
Yeah, and I think they're 19-1 now. Is that right? At full strength.
Yeah, I think that's right.
They mentioned a lot on the broadcast tonight that this team at full strength is as good as anyone in the country. And I've seen it on Twitter. The national talking heads talking about this Iowa State team. Bad news for everyone else. They're out of their funk. Which I don't know if you can take that away after 1 game or not, but
what I was really impressed. So I completely agree. They looked like one of the best teams in the country. They looked like the Iowa State team that I thought I knew. I didn't think it was a mirage what we saw last March, what we saw in Maui against Marquette, that second half against Iowa. I didn't think that was a mirage, but when you go 4-4 in February, the turnover problem is certainly a problem. You start to maybe doubt it. And today was the best, that first half was the best 20 minutes of basketball they played since Auburn. But what happened in the second half of that Auburn game? They blew that 18-point lead. They let Auburn back into the game. So that was my number 1 takeaway that I was going into for the second half. I was so interested to see how they would come out. And I know the turnovers let Arizona back into the game a little bit, but especially that first 10 minutes of the second half, they were maybe more intense than they were in the first half. There was that great back-to-back sequence, ended in a Taman Lipsey run out off of a steal and then a Curtis Jones run out after a steal. That was Iowa State basketball at its peak, and I don't know really the last time that we saw that firing on full cylinders. So if you're TJ Otzelberger and the coaching staff, if you're the fan base, I think you've got to be thrilled with what you saw to start that second half, because I think that was my biggest takeaway. I don't have the number in front of me. I want to say they hit 9 first-half threes. Iowa State finished the game with just 11. So they were able to keep their foot on the gas, only making 2 3-pointers in the second half, which you had to assume that they were going to come down to earth a little bit. So that was all really encouraging for me to see.
Yeah, you were right. They were 9 for 13 in the first half, which has got to be unheard of for TJ Otzelberg team at Iowa State.
It felt a lot like that KU game last year. in the sense just how many they were making. But I saw an Arizona journalist tweet out, like, oh, Iowa State's the 290th three-point shooting team in the country, and they're making this. But the encouraging thing to me was they were open. Like, I know Milan hit a couple of contested ones, but for the most part, those were in-rhythm open shots, which Iowa State really hasn't been getting a lot lately. And then it certainly helps when you get two of them from Nate Heisey. If you can get that Nate Heisey for the rest of the season, the ceiling that we all thought there was is there. The ceiling is a Final Four. It's a couple bounces your way, and it could be playing for a national championship. And not to overreact to one game, because the Oklahoma State game was 4 days ago. But tonight reinforced for me that ceiling is still what we thought it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's – I mean, it is crazy to totally change your views 4 days apart, but they have all these pieces that fit so well together. If you take any one of them out, it's clear that this is a different team. And at full strength, they're a really tough team to beat.
I don't know if George and Tyrese are here still, but I would love to bring them here and talk to them, because I'm a huge NBA fan. And I think the reason that I typically don't get too high or too low throughout the basketball season is I watch almost every Denver Nuggets game of the season. Oh, George Niang, right here. George, I got a question for you. So, how would you tell Cyclone fans the ups and downs of a basketball season?
It's that time of year, but in March we're going to make a run.
If you couldn't hear it, he said, it happens, it's that time of year, but it's March, and we're going to make a run. So my point that I was making, it's crazy timing that George showed up. My point is you can't take the floor and the ceiling and judge the team. You gotta do it in between. And I think Iowa State showed a lot of grit tonight in that sense. And you can't judge basketball seasons off of one game. I'll be very, very interested to see how they come out Tuesday night on senior night against a BYU team that I think that game will be tougher to win than it was tonight heading into it. BYU is the hottest team in the country. I haven't seen what their score is right now against West Virginia, but they could be riding a 6-game winning streak into Hilton Coliseum. Oh, they're up 20. I just pulled up the score. So you're getting a red-hot BYU team coming into Hilton Coliseum in just 3 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing they got that one at Hilton.
Yeah, no kidding. That's not a game you want to play in Provo.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, that's going to be a game. You know, obviously tonight helps quite a bit for Iowa State to get in that double bye territory. But yeah, Tuesday is going to be that all important. That could decide very easily who's playing on Wednesday, who's playing on Thursday.
Yep. There's a lot at stake.
Well, Jake, that's all I got for you. Appreciate you joining me. And of course, thank you to our friends at Channel Seed, Keen Project Solutions, and the Tuzel family for their sponsorship all year long. We appreciate you joining us. Williams and Bloom coming up on Sunday.